Listening to somebody is an active thing.
Yeah,
just to give a basic example, if I said to you, please, you've been doing this to me, and every time you do this to me, it hurts me, right? And then you keep doing it. You go, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, but then you keep doing that.
Yeah.
You're not listening to me.
Hearing but not listening.
You're hearing what I'm saying, you're understanding and taking in what I'm saying, but you're not stopping the destructive behavior.
It doesn't mean enough for you. It doesn't mean enough to you to change. All children that genuinely still want a relationship with their parent, that is what they are looking for. That humility to say, you know what, I don't completely agree. You know, be honesty as well. I don't completely agree with what you did, but I understand that something I have done or something in our relationship is broken, and I care more about you and my relationship with you than winning. So I'm gonna do what I need to do to rebuild that relationship. And if that adult child can do what they need to do to meet them halfway, that relationship comes back, and that separation, that cutting them off, does not last a lifetime. When you become more of a hindrance than a help, more of an enemy than a nurturing family member, at that point, there is no reason for me to keep you in my life. Ladies and gentlemen of the internet, welcome to the Cherry Jazmine Show. This is
Cherry B.
And I am Xavia Jazmine. We are sister-in-laws and friends. We talk about everything under the sun, and we want to open that discussion up to you. So, what are we talking about today, Cherry B?
So today we are going to be, unfortunately, going down the rabbit hole of adult children who cut off their parents, but specifically also just family members who cut off other toxic family members. We're going to be just talking about how and why that happened. This is going to be a several part series because the video that we're discussing today is one that Oprah did a few weeks ago, and essentially it's such a large topic that we really just feel that it needs proper conversation. So we're going to watch a clip, and then we're going to come back and discuss, and then please feel free to talk about this in the comments and talk about how these types of things have affected you, if they have affected you, if you agree with us, if you disagree with us. So yeah, let's watch this clip and we'll come back with the rest of our commentary.
Okay.
And when somebody new in my life finds out that I've been no contact with them, without failure, the number one thing that they tell me is, but they're still your mom.
Hi, everybody. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Oprah podcast. Some experts believe that there's been a shift in how younger generations protect their mental health and their boundaries, or have an expanded view of what is considered abuse. And that has led to a silent epidemic. So social media has millions of videos with the hashtag no contact from adult children who say that their parent or their sibling is toxic and they've had enough.
Dysfunctional families will put you in a position to have to go no contact and then act shocked when you actually go no contact. This newer generation has realized that family is so much more than blood relation. Family is love and support and encouragement. Family is guidance. The people who love your children, the people who applaud your milestones, the people who are with you at your worst and stay with you till you get to your best. Not the ones that kick you when you're down, not the ones that judge everything that you've had to do in life, not the ones that use your struggles as a talking point for their coffee time conversations.
There's an increase in the number of people cutting off their parents, but there's one thing I've noticed about this trend. Has anybody else noticed that when an adult child chooses not to have a relationship with a parent, it's always, but it's your mom and dad. You only get one mom and dad. Why are you doing that? And it's never, wow, what could a parent have done to cause their child to make this decision but feel like it was the right one? It's never, what happened that made a grown adult feel like the need to walk away from the people who raised them? And it's definitely never, but they're your children. How can you treat them that way? Why is the weight placed on the child? Why is the burden of maintaining peace, preserving connection, and forgiving endlessly dumped onto the very person who's probably carrying the scars? No one ever stops to think, maybe that parent wasn't a safe person. Maybe the parent was emotionally manipulative. abusive, dismissive, narcissistic, or just constantly absent when it mattered most. Maybe parent was just a title and not something they lived up to. And yet the child is the one questioned. The child is the one who's guilted, shamed, or gaslit. There's this automatic defense of the parent as if the role of parent comes with some lifetime immunity from accountability. But here's the truth. People don't cut off their parents typically for no reason. It's not impulsive. It's not heartless. It's usually the last result after years of trying, years of hoping things would change, years of therapy, tears, inner conflict. It's often deep, painful act of self-preservation. And yet society keeps asking the wrong question. Instead of why did you walk away, maybe it's time to start asking what happened that made staying impossible.
I went no contact with my mother, and here's what no one tells you about that experience. Everyone said she was absolutely lovely. Behind closed doors, she chipped away at me slowly, with silence, guilt, control. I was always the problem. If I cried, I was dramatic. If I spoke up, I was disrespectful. I didn't grow up feeling safe. I grew up afraid of setting her off at any possible moment. When I went no contact, it wasn't easy. It wasn't a middle finger moment. It was grief. It was grieving the mother that I always wanted her to be, and actually accepting the one that she actually really truly was. If you're questioning your own story right now, I see you. You are not ungrateful. You are waking up. So what is going on? So we gathered leading experts, and people with different experiences and points of view on this issue, including parents whose adult children have cut them off. And we'll hear from other adult children who chose to go no contact with their parents. I know this is a tender, hot button topic. My hope is that we can open up the heart space and really listen. I'm not on anybody's side. I just want to hear what everyone has to say. So let's start by introducing Dr. Joshua Coleman, who's a psychologist and best-selling author of Rules of Estrangement: Why Adult Children Cut Ties and How to Heal the Conflict. Welcome, Dr. Coleman.
Thank you for having me.
So is this a new thing? Because, I mean, for many, many, many years of doing shows and talking to families from all over the country and the world, when there's a crisis, people just sort of figured it out or came together at Thanksgiving and had a big fight. But is this new?
Yeah, I mean, there's always been estrangements, right? Forever there's been estrangements. But it's new the way we think about family. There's been a radical change in the way that we think about family. The old days of honor thy mother and thy father, respect thy elders, families forever, has given way to this much more of an emphasis on personal happiness, personal growth, my identity, my political beliefs, my mental health. So much so that today protecting my mental health is the single most common thing that I see in every single letter from every estranged adult child.
Has this been exacerbated or has this increased because of social media?
Oh, there's no question. Absolutely.
Okay, so one of the first things that he addressed, which we definitely find important, is the whole concept of honor thy mother and thy father. And the reason why we're seeing a shift in this in the modern age is because a lot of parents these days are not being honorable. And so a lot of adult children are waking up to the fact that, okay, I do want to honor my mother and my father. I love them in most cases, but the way they are treating me is not honorable. So they're in a position where they can no longer honor their mother and their father without themselves suffering from it.
I will say as well, I do think that in this day and age that we're living in, people just, tend to be a little bit more self-aware with everything that's happening. But I don't believe that this is something that has just started happening in this generation because of social media. I think it is more obvious now. More people are realizing that this is happening to not just them.
Yeah.
But if you actually look, there are so many people, specifically in the boomer generation, whose parents kicked them out of the house at a young age, whose parents, had problems with drugs and alcohol, specifically in the black community, whose parents who weren't, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everyone in the black community, because there are loads of really good, stable, solid parents in the black community.
100%.
But just in terms of having, everybody would kind of have that uncle who wouldn't necessarily, have left his parents' house, or who would be a bum, or who would be this or whatever, and whoever that kid was of that uncle would end up suffering, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the time, time, we just don't talk about it in the Black community. And I think a lot of the time it is a thing where we're thinking that we're the only ones, whereas social media has now just revealed that this is happening on such a global scale, because overall people are more selfish. And I think a lot of the times when you think about a selfish person, you're thinking about that selfishness coming from a younger person, but you're not necessarily thinking about that selfishness coming from an older person.
Right.
And I think that's where it's kind of different to how it was. It used to be that people wouldn't dare to be in any way confrontational to their parents.
Yeah.
But now that it is a situation where, you know, young people are realizing, I don't have to deal with this if I don't want to. It just is a different issue altogether.
And I think a key thing off the back of what you said as well is that, because what he starts explaining is that essentially this whole thing about mental health is becoming a trend. And when he first starts explaining it, he says it like it's a bad thing. But actually, what going off of what Cherry said, and actually what he ends up saying, continues to say, is that the reason why it's becoming a trend is because those close family members who are supposed to be the ones who validate their feelings and validate their experiences are the ones creating those toxic experiences. And so other people across the world or across the country on social media also experiencing it, they are then the only ones who will validate that for them, which is why it becomes a trend, because that social connection that they can't get in their immediate vicinity, they're getting on the internet, which is sad. And we'd rather it be, you know, within personal families, so that so that we're not relying on a trending topic to validate our feelings. But that's the way we're just finding it at this point in time.
And actually, there are so many things that are attacking our mental health in this day and age. Like, it used to be that everybody had a much simpler existence, whereas now our careers, our bosses, our work colleagues, like the amount of stresses in life, like the cost of living, trying to find a decent partner that loves you, that's a decent person, trying to spend time with that person when your life is sucked away by your work that you don't even actually care about and you're not passionate about, but you have to do because you need to make money. All of these things are things that affect your mental and emotional well-being. And if you don't have parents that understand that there needs to be boundaries, that, you know, as adults, we are stressed out, right? And it's not because we want to be stressed out, it's because all of these things are happening. Like, please, somebody in the comments, tell the truth here, okay? When it comes down to it, you have probably gone from job to job to job and realized that your managers are idiots everywhere you go. All of them. And it's not just because you're being difficult or because it's because things are just not right in a lot of workplaces.
Because you're like a number to them they know they can't say it like that, but you're finding that they're treating you like that anyway.
And because you're this number, they don't care about your well-being. They don't care about you being able to see your family or have time off or take sick days. They only care
not
about
all places,
getting...
but most places.
Not
Sorry.
all places. But they care about getting their money's worth. That's what they care about. They care
Absolutely.
about their own business,
First
right?
priority.
And so when you're in those situations continuously, and remember, work is literally like 50% of your life as an adult. And so if you have the cost of living, work drama, right? Then if you have an extended circle of people, like you have a church community or you have, you know, other friends that are outside of that, you have to deal with the politics with all of that. And then you have your own immediate family, like your wife, your husband, your children. So the last thing you need is parents that are trying to manipulate you or control you or anything like that, right? And it just ends up being a cycle of you trying to explain that you have boundaries, that you need support, you need help, you need to actually change the relationship dynamic because it's actually adding problems to an already problematic life, right? And they don't understand because in their mind, you're their kid and it doesn't matter what you want, it matters what they want, you know? And that is where I think a lot of this is coming from, to be honest, when it comes to specifically children and their parents in the first place, because you know, that's even without going into the dynamics of emotional problems that your parents may have, right? That's just the surface of what's happening in your life as an adult child, right? And so all of these things make a massive difference in your relationship. And if your parents aren't willing to at least acknowledge that you're your own person with your own problems, they just are going to have to get cut off. And I think that's what many people are realizing.
When you become more of a hindrance than a help, more of an enemy than a nurturing family member, at that point, there is no reason for me to keep you in my life. In fact, what Cherry said about all the other stresses of life, if anything, it's safer and healthier for me to separate from you. And I think one of the things that is hard for a lot of, especially traditional members of the public, when they hear these stories to really gauge, is that just because we are blood relatives, if you are becoming more of an enemy, it gets harder and harder for me to actually see you as my brother, my sister, my mother, my father, because how you're acting is someone who's trying to attack and destroy me, not someone who's trying to build and nurture me, which is what a close family member should do, which is what you expect parents to do, which is why we're seeing so many adult children in this generation making that tough, and it is a tough choice, you know. I think because it's becoming such a trend, it can be easy to see it as, especially if someone's being able to summarize their story on social media, it's easy to see it as an easy decision for them. But what we see throughout this video is it's not easy, and it's not a one-time decision. It's little decisions made over time because those parents or those family members have made it hard for them. They've wanted to keep the relationship, but those family members have made it hard for them to do so. Just to let you know, ladies and gentlemen, if you hear any backing vocals, that is baby Cherry in the background. So we're gonna try and speak as loud as we can, but she's so bubbly and so full of energy, and we don't have a what's that, noise cancelling mic, so maybe one day. Yes. So as we were saying, so I think it's helpful to bear in mind, especially if you haven't been through any of those situations, having toxic family members that you've had to separate from or consider separating from, to consider that when these people are putting out their stories on social media, I'm not going to say everyone, but for the most part, it's the last resort, and it has been a very hard and very difficult last resort to make. And they can't all be wrong. There's so much of it now, and yes, there are a lot of sort of extremes and in the wokeness of this generation and social media and the avenues it's going down, which the doctor, the specialist, who put in text along what his name is, we forgot, but he did make a very valid point of social media is geared towards funneling in the information that you want to hear, so you can end up listening to people who are supporting you when that may not be the right advice or the right sort of guidance that you need. But at the same time, the fact that there's so much of it out there, all of these people can't be wrong at the same time. You know, there are some parents that are reasonable parents, but maybe they haven't made the right decision, and so for their child that may struggle to communicate with them, there's a miscommunication there. It doesn't mean that that child is wrong for separating from that parent. It just means that both of them need to work together to reconcile. Reconciliation is truly what they both want.
I just watched a video that said, once a child has become an adult, parents no longer get to be the parent that they want to be to their child. They must be the parent that their child wants them to be to them. So let's talk about it. Most children are going no contact with their parents today for the simple fact that a lot of parents to gaslight their children into forgetting about how they were treated as a child. The podcast I just watched just said what was a regular Tuesday for you ended up being a day that I can never forget as a young adult. And it's the same day that I got to go to a therapist and speak about just to heal from. So what wasn't big to you because that was normal in your parenting routine became a trauma for me that I have to heal from as old. So simply put in my words, in today's time, the relationship has gone no contact. It's just a climax to a story of a narrative that parents created. Because again, remember, for some children, you were never allowed to speak up and to hold adults accountable for the things that they did wrong because that was deemed disrespectful. So you grew up to navigate through life being walked over, being mistreated, and being abused because those are the same patterns and the same things that were happening to you as a child, just by people who had no accountability. Let me know what y'all think.
And actually, I will say this. As a childcare professional, I've been working with children for 18 years now. Children are basically inbuilt, like it's built in you as a child to always want your parent's approval. It's literally built in you to always want to have some kind of relationship with them, for you to want to feel like they're proud of you. It's literally a thing where for a child to cut off their parents, it has to be after years and years of you saying the same thing and them just completely not listening. Like I've almost never, now I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because you know people can be stubborn and stupid, and sometimes you can just have a child who's spoiled and selfish and doesn't listen and doesn't do anything. But what you'll find when you talk to a lot of these children who are adults, mind you, right? Most of the time what they're saying is, it's over time they've tried to express themselves in many ways. They've tried to have counseling, they've tried to, you know, have some kind of way of explaining to this parent, sibling, uncle, whoever it is, and basically they just are ignored. Their feelings are ignored, invalidated, or they're told that no matter what the scenario, they're wrong, right? And my thing is, it can't be that in a two-way relationship, one person is right all the time and the other person is wrong all the time. When you're little as a child, you can kind of have that dynamic more because children don't know what they're talking about. But when you're an adult, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, for you to have any relationship with any other human on the planet, you need to have a sense of reciprocity. It needs to be a two-way street. It needs to be that I listen and respect and value your opinions and your decisions, and you do the same for me. And I think what happens in the Black community a lot is that you get this sense of, you know, you have to respect me as an elder regardless of whether I'm right or wrong. And it's so funny because in the beginning of the video there's actually a girl, and she's not Black, but she says, oh, when she speaks to people they go, oh, but that's still your mum. And it's like, just because somebody is your mum, your dad, your uncle, your aunt, whoever, does not mean that they have a right to be in your life if all they cause is havoc. If all somebody brings to your life is problems and havoc and issues, it does not mean that they have a right to be there.
And if I can just add, I'm a very visual person, so I like to think of this analogy. If you have a nurse or a doctor that is clearly injecting poison into your system, but that's your mother or your father, and you know that, and you go, stop, don't inject me, they go, but they're a nurse and they're your parent, like, trust them, they're doing the right thing. But you see on the needle says poison. You know, it gets to a certain point where you have to think for yourself and go, as much as I love my mother or father, as much as I would love to trust them because they're a doctor, they're giving me poison. You know,
you have to use your common sense.
You have to use your common sense, because unfortunately it forces you into a level of survival mode against those family members, because you have to think of survival for yourself anyway. So if that family member is causing you to have to go into survival mode, you have to ask yourself, is it worth keeping that relationship if they're constantly putting me in danger, if they're actively and consciously putting me in danger? Then again, back to the initial point, you have to, you end up seeing them as more of an enemy than a nurturing family member, because that's how they're acting, not the box that you put them in. That by definition, they don't have your best interests at heart. They're trying to cause you harm. That's the decision you have to make, or you sacrifice your own life, you know, whether that's metaphorical, physical, mental, or eventually the whole thing.
You know what? Just based on what you just said, like, people don't realize that there are many forms of abusive behavior, right? When we think about abuse, and I think this is another thing that people have realized, the younger generation in particular has realized, when you think about abuse, oftentimes you think about physical abuse, or you think about, you know, emotional abuse, but there's actually psychological abuse, right? And what I find with so many people in this generation is that for those who do cut off their family members, those family members are psychologically abusive, right? So when I think of psychological abuse, what's the first thing I think about? Manipulation, gaslighting. When somebody continuously tells you that you're wrong, no matter what proof or evidence to show that you have facts to say that this is a wrong thing. When somebody is manipulating you or coercing you to make you feel like you have no choice but to do what they want. When somebody is trying to control your life, right? When somebody is actually trying to belittle you, trying to make it seem like you don't understand because you're younger than me, or because I'm the parent and you're the adult, or whatever, right? These things are things that over time they chip away at your identity as a person, right?
Exactly.
And it becomes more than just, I don't like what you're saying. It becomes, I don't even want to be around you, because every time I'm around you, you make me feel bad about myself.
It's subconscious at first.
Absolutely. And you don't realize it for a long time, right? It's subconscious, but then you realize that not only are they making you feel bad, but they actually not only don't protect you, but actually attack you, right? And this is what I have seen with so many older family members to younger family members. They literally gaslight them and belittle them to the point where they're attacking them. So it's like, okay, this thing is happening to me, and instead of you backing me up or at least trying to understand where I'm coming from, you're literally making all manner of excuses as to why I'm in the wrong, when this thing is clearly wrong, right? And I've literally seen people slander their family members. Like, we have a family member who, for years, we were trying to work out a situation, and we were trying to work it out privately, we were trying to work it out through counseling, right? And this family member literally went to every single family member that they could, right? And told them all kinds of lies, to the point that those other family members were coming back to us, and bear in mind, we didn't know this was happening, so we were just thinking, you know,
for years.
For years we didn't know this was happening. But what would happen is that for years we'd get people coming back to us, and they'd be horrible to us. Like, they'd be like, oh, how can you do this, or da-da-da-da, and we'd be like, and you know what's funny, we weren't putting two and two together, that this person, even though they would come back to us and tell us, this person is saying this and this and this, we weren't thinking that they were doing it deliberately. Does that make sense?
We thought at first it was coming from a place of hurt, and so people, as they say, hurt people, so we're thinking, oh, this person, they just don't know how else to express their feelings, and then the family members, out of compassion for them, are coming back to us in a more vicious way, going, how dare you.
And what was interesting is, this family member specifically said to us that they don't want us to talk about our family business, right? So when we would be trying to talk to them, we'd be trying to keep as much information in as possible.
Absolutely.
Because we don't want to, you know, expose them. We don't want to talk about our private family business, right? But what was happening is, not only was this person telling private family business, but then they would add lies. And what we realized is, it was not about them saying anything out of her. It was about control and manipulation. What they wanted was for everybody to feel that we were against them because we weren't doing what they wanted, right? And so when we realized, like, this is actual manipulation, it's not at all about anything other than them being a victim because they want to control the narrative, right? They want to get us to do what they want us to do. And because we're not trying to do that, they're willing to turn everybody against us. And this is what by any means. And
we wish we were making it up. Sorry to cut you, Cherry, because this is exactly, we empathize with those speaking out on social media. Again, we fully acknowledge that there are people that can twist the narrative themselves, you know, as the people rejecting their family members. We fully understand and appreciate that. But from personal experience, it is so hard. I think 10 years, the whole process for us took 10 years with this person, multiple different chances, and multiple stages. We'd have stages of just saying we just want space, to having to expand that because the boundaries were breached every time, and this malicious controlling the narrative was going on under the surface that whole time. And so it was, and I suppose we had the advantage that it was us, you know, and my brother, Cherry's husband, you know, all of us together sort of supporting each other and sort of understanding each other. Okay, are we overreacting? Shall we give this person another chance? Let's try again, because maybe they do feel exiled, maybe they are thinking, you know, I'm trying to give as much grace as possible and sort of supporting each other to say, okay, let's give them one more chance, it's a different situation, let's give them one more chance. But 10 years.
And where it changed was our counselor actually told us to that we needed to like separate from this person, because essentially
it took external counselling.
It took external counselling, and we had external counselling multiple times. This was not like one time, it was multiple times. We even had counselling with this person. And so what was interesting in this scenario is that what it came down to was anybody who does not want to move forward, you cannot force them to move forward.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you want to have a relationship, like let's say me and Xavia, Jazmine are having an argument, right? We both have to want to fix the argument.
Absolutely.
We both have to want to sit down and listen to the other person in order for things to get better, in order for things to change. And if that does not happen, there can be no moving forward. So what we found is we would be like trying to explain and trying to say, look, all we're saying is this, and and that person was just dead set on it's my way or no way, right?
Yeah.
And so they wanted to have a relationship, but only under their terms. And what we realized is this can't work. It will never work, because there is no change in this person's mindset.
It's a hard realization. The majority of adult children who separate from their parents or toxic family members, they've gotten to a point where they realize this person does not want true reconciliation. This person does not want a genuine, mutually respectful relationship. You can have a relationship with your parents as a child where you're not exactly equals in the sense that they're always going to be your parent, you're always going to be their child, but they respect you as an adult, especially if you're a mature adult, you made your own life decisions, they'll respect that, they'll support you, and with that you can find a mutual basis where there is mutual respect. You'll always have respect for them as the parent, but as the parent, they will have a respect for you and a respect for your boundaries as an adult child. And that's the core thing that is missing when an adult child blocks out their parent from their life.
There's a guy in this video, and I don't think we're gonna cover it yet, but basically he talks about how his relationship
two of them,
two of them, where basically his relationship was he decided to cut off his family because his family essentially hated his wife.
When Brie and I first got together, we very much felt like my parents were apathetic towards her. They were not super interested in getting to know her, and
they didn't like her.
Yeah, that's the feeling that we got.
That's the short answer.
That's the feeling.
They didn't like her. They didn't like her.
Yeah, and the way that really surfaced was what we perceived as a disinterest in getting to genuinely know her.
Yeah.
And for while we started dating, so be it. But as it became clear that this was a real relationship, that this was an intense relationship, that we were in love, and I said, this is the woman I'm going to marry. And as we moved into that more serious realm, it went from what we perceived as apathy to more of, we don't like this. And the way that took form for us was my parents, we found through friends, were scheduling lunches to have conversation with my friends where the topic was, we're worried about Chris. That was the first thing. And then it became, can we delay this engagement, or can we...
Asking your friends.
Yes, or can we take this marriage off the table?
And it's one thing to kind of dislike somebody's girlfriend or dislike, but still be respectful. It's another thing that when somebody has made a decision to marry someone and you're purposely just disrespecting this person's spouse, I don't know what you think is going to happen.
Right.
But you're putting them in a position where they have to either choose the spouse that they married or you, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents don't think that they will choose the spouse. But you married this person,
exactly.
right? So obviously you as the adult child now, it's like, I have to choose the person that I married because I love them, I have children with them, or I'm gonna have children with them, and you're just attacking this person for no reason, or for a reason that doesn't seem reasonable, right?
Yeah.
And so it's fascinating because this seems to be a big issue as well, where you get people who are married or have children and the boundaries need to be put in place around the spouse, whether it's a woman or a man, and around those kids, because oftentimes the grandparents will just feel like they can just do whatever they want with your kids. They can do whatever they want with your spouse or whatever. And it just becomes a problem. So
just following on from what Cherry was saying, as you go through the video, you see that there's both the specialist and another male that's in the audience. They have their children. And one thing that I really, really appreciate, which is the opposite of what we've been talking about the sort of toxic traits that a parent that gets cut off has. On the other side of this, we see the accounts of the two fathers who had their own separate issues with their children, and
where their children cut them off, right? And in these scenarios, I think both of them would have said at some point, or even at the point where they were cut off, that they had a good relationship with their children. But what happened was when they were cut off, they sat back and said, hang on, I need to reflect on what's gone on here, because am I actually part of the problem? Is there, and both of them, I think they did say, okay, my child has an issue with communication. And to be fair, that is a growing issue going forward as well. But I will say, on the one hand, if a child, even an adult child, has a toxic parent especially, they are going to have communication issues, because they've dealt with a lot of psychological damage of their opinions and thoughts and just voice in general being being shut down, being smothered, being snuffed out, because they're not allowed to express who they are, what they feel, as long as it's not agreeing with what that parent thinks. On the other side, even with a healthy parent who really does love their children, just a part of our growth, as we all know, we get to points where we do lose communication with the people we love because for whatever reason we feel like we're not being heard. And one thing that I really appreciate that these fathers did is that even though they didn't completely agree or maybe at all agree with their children cutting them off, they both went individually, sat and went, okay, are they right in any way? One of the fathers went and spoke to their child and said what went wrong. Then they listened to their child tell them what went wrong. They reflected on it and they came back and they said, listen, I want a relationship. I want to work on this. The child suggested therapy and they bridged that gap and they actually went to therapy with their child. And I was like, let me finish. Yeah, I'm gonna let you finish.
Yeah.
It just reminded me of
so many things.
Yeah, so many things.
And so from that dad humbling himself and going, you know what, I don't want this, but my child wants it and I want a relationship with them. I'm going to do what they need to do. And the therapy helped them. And they grew from that. The second father, the professional, I don't remember whether he said that he actually spoke to the child, but he already kind of had a sense, I think, from what the child said before they cut them off. He knew what they were thinking about the situation. And he sat and he thought, you know what, they could have communicated it better, but I understand the issue that they're having. And then he went back to the child and he said, you know what, let's start again. Like, my priority is having a relationship with you. And that, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, that is the thing that most adult, in fact, I'm going to say all adult children, the ones who genuinely, have an issue with something their parents have done, all children that genuinely still want a relationship with their parent, that is what they are looking for. That humility to say, you know what, I don't completely agree. Honesty as well. I don't completely agree with what you did, but I understand that something I have done or something in our relationship is broken, and I care more about you and my relationship with you than winning. So I'm going to do what I need to do to rebuild that relationship. And if that adult child can do what they need to do to meet them halfway, that relationship comes back. And that separation, that cutting them off, does not last a lifetime. It just lasts for that period of time that it takes the natural growth, because we're all human and we understand that we're all imperfect and need to learn and grow. Okay.
There are so many things that you said. There are so many things that you said. First things first.
Yeah.
It's not about winning, right? Second thing, listening to somebody is an active thing.
Yeah.
There are so many parents, I believe, who hear but don't listen, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Just to give a basic example, if I said to you, please, you've been doing this to me, and every time you do this to me, it hurts me, right? And then you keep doing it. You go, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, but then you keep doing that.
Yeah.
You're not listening to me.
Hearing but not listening.
You're hearing what I'm saying, you're understanding and taking in what I'm saying, but you're not stopping the destructive behavior.
It doesn't mean enough for you. It doesn't mean enough to you to change.
This is the thing. And what so many parents are doing is they're going, yes, that's your opinion, right? But actually, this and this and this. Oh, yes, you know, I understand that I hurt you and I'm sorry you feel hurt. But there's a reason why I'm sorry you feel that way. There's a reason why I hurt you and I have every right to do that because I'm your parent, right? There's a reason. And no, I'm not going to stop talking to people about you because that's my... Do you know... There was a point, and I'm going to say this and I won't say anymore. There was a point when we were dealing with this particular family member where Xavia, Jazmine and my husband had over and over and over again said their opinion and said, in fact, there were numerous times that this happened actually, right? Where they'd said over and over and over again, this is what's bothering us, blah, 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 blah. And I basically didn't say anything, right? And there was one time in particular that I remember this happened. And then when I spoke, they blew up at me. But this happened over a period of years, right? Where actually, for the longest time, because they blew up at me the first time, I didn't say anything, right? I just kind of let it happen. And so eventually, I did feel the need to say something because I was like, this has been going on and on and on, and you're not listening, right? You're just making loads of excuses as to why it should be happening or why you should have the right to do whatever you want and we should just be quiet, right? Because that's basically what the person was saying. And this person, I literally said to them, not only is this happening, and I think this is what, you know, my husband is trying to say, I think this is what Xavia, Jazmine is trying to say, but then I actually pointed out that they had lied, right? And I was like, you have gone around saying all these horrible things about me that are just not true. This person had the audacity to say to me, I have the right, my experience is my experience, and I have the right to tell whoever I want about whatever I want. And I was like, but what you're saying is not true. And that's the problem. What you're saying is not true. Yeah. And if it was true that I was this horrible person, or that, you know, if Xavia, Jazmine was this horrible person, or my husband was this horrible person, that would make sense. But nothing that you're saying is actually happening.
Which is exactly the issue with my truth versus the truth.
The truth. And what's interesting about this scenario is that oftentimes when the older person has a problem with the younger person, everybody just believes the older person, right?
Especially in our culture. And a lot of traditional cultures.
And this is what leads to them having to be cut off.
Yeah.
Because what you've done is you've essentially put us in a situation where we have to cut you off.
Right.
Because you're actually actively turning everyone against us and making things hard for us.
And it becomes the only civil solution.
Yeah.
Because to the traditional culture, to the traditional family members, you battling it out with them, you trying to make them see sense, is disrespecting them, is disrespecting the family, is disrespecting, just disrespectful, and a no-go zone. And so even if you do try, even if those people do try and help their family member to understand, and sometimes it does get heated, ultimately all that can be done for the sake of sanity is to cut off and have peace of mind, and actually just peace and quiet. To just,
and I do think that is such a toxic trait in the black community, because I understand you saying to a child that's under the age of 18, don't talk back to me. That makes sense, because there are certain times when a child is just going to be ranting and they're not going to be making no sense, right? But when an adult is saying to you that they have drastic issues that are causing them major problems in their lives, and you are in any way, shape or form unwilling to acknowledge that, that is a problem, right? And so you should not at that point be saying to this adult person, especially when they're married, if they have a kid, anything like that,
working.
right? Or even just a working adult
Right.
living in your house, right? Because they're old enough to work and to pull their weight.
They've proven their worth.
Yeah, they've proven their worth in terms of being reasonably responsible. Yeah. They're old enough to work and prove their worth in the world.
Right.
But they might not have moved out yet because they just haven't managed to come to that stage. You should at least be able to sit down and have a reasonable conversation. When you make it seem like their position in life is not valuable just because they're younger than you, right? What you're doing is you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. And you can't come back from that after a certain point, because what you're basically saying is it's my way or no way, it's my way or the highway, right? We just have to learn, I think, as a community to actually express ourselves. And we're gonna go now, guys, because as you can hear, my daughter is just, you know, moving on from this sitting still
Baby
situation.
Cherry is adding the backing vocals as she does. So, ladies and gents of the internet, we have said a lot, and I know that you'll have some things to say about what we said. We'd love to open the discussion to you. Please tell us what you think in the comments. Let us know if there's anything more you want us to speak on. We will do a part 2, etc. on this video, because there's so much in it and so much that's valid that we really want to cover. So we will see you in the next one. Bye.